Hello everybody, welcome to another JFW Industries YouTube video. Today I'll be demonstrating the GUI Handover and Indefinite Handover features of the Programmable Attenuator Assembly Sample Test Program. These features are only available in Programmable Attenuator Assemblies, Handover Test Systems, and Transceiver Test Systems, and not matrix switches or switch assemblies, because they only have to do with programmable attenuators. So if your test system from JFW has programmable attenuators in it, it will have the GUI handover testing in the test program. So I've opened up my test program. First I'm going to set up my programmable attenuator parameters here. Do 8 attenuators of 127 dB range with a 1 dB step size. And I'm just going to show you quickly the differences between the two of these. GUI handover, well, first of all, just to make sure you understand how the handover works, is when you hit the start button, it is going to take all of the enabled attenuators on the left hand side here. In this case we just have attenuator 1 enabled. It will start at its starting dB value here, stop at its stopping dB value here, and increase by its dB step size value here, and that will occur every, in this case, 100 milliseconds. Okay. Based on the speed at which our controller can accept commands, there is a minimum number of an interval time. So the idea is that, for example, Ethernet mode is the fastest, and depending on how many attenuators you're trying to control, there is a minimum interval time for that. So 1 and 2 attenuators, you can set your interval time to 1 millisecond and you won't have any issues. But if you were to do, say, 3 attenuators set to 1 millisecond, eventually the test program would be sending out commands faster than the processor in the test computer could keep up with them, and eventually the buffer would overflow and you would have errors. So we just want to make sure that you're always have an interval time up here that is greater than the minimum interval time. And RS-232, depending on its baud rate, obviously how fast it is sending out commands, that also, like the slowest, for example, would be 9600 baud with 8 attenuators is 60 milliseconds. But we have it defaulted at 100 milliseconds for this. So I'll just run this really quick. You can see what happens. So attenuator 1 is increasing. And this is the GUI handover, so it is going to stop at 127 dB. Okay. And if we did the same thing for the indefinite handover, the indefinite handover is going to repeat. It's going to go to its extreme, the stopping dB value, and then repeat the opposite direction until it hits the starting dB value. Okay. And from here you can also pause or resume, and it will remember the direction that it was going. Or you can pause and hit reset to go to the starting values. You can hit the next button here in indefinite handover, or in the GUI handover we have a plus and minus button, so you can go to the next interval or you can go to the previous interval. Next, previous. But because the GUI handover stops, we make it so you can go backwards, but the GUI indefinite handover, however, we just say you go to the next interval. So if you're at an extreme and hit next, it'll just go the other direction. So now that I've basically covered the two differences between the two, I'm going to do all of my testing here for you using the indefinite handover, just to illustrate some of the more powerful features that this can enable you to do. You'll see here that there are 8 slider bars, and that's because we have 8 attenuators set up. If your test system has more than 8 attenuators, you're still only going to see 8 slider bars here. And then in that case, you would have to manually address them. You could only control up to 8 attenuators at a time with the GUI Indefinite Handover, and then you would just have to address them. So if you had 16 attenuators, then you would change this to 16. Okay, and then you can address these however you want, but you could only do 8 at a time. And of course you'd have to enable the ones that you wanted. Okay, so I'm just going to set it to 4 attenuators, because that's all I need to really illustrate how well this can work for you. So again, let's enable all 4 of these. Attenuators 1, 2, 3, and 4. They're already pre-assigned. And then we'll just vary the step sizes. We'll make attenuator 1, 1 dB, attenuator 2, 2 dB, 3, 4 dB, and 4, 8 dB. And start. Okay. If we pause, we can hit next. So you'll notice that right now attenuator 4 is at 120 dB. If it were to go to the next interval, 128 dB would be outside of its maximum range of 127. So in that case, it will just it will not increase. It will then turn around and decrease. So instead of 128 dB, it would be 112 dB. And another really powerful feature that the GUI Indefinite Handover allows you to do is set up a MIMO test in which you want to have multiple attenuators fading from different values at the same time. Previously, our fade attenuator command and variable handover command would do this, but it would only do it for one attenuator at a time. And the controller, when you send a fade attenuator command, it can do nothing else during that process. So if you send a fade attenuator command that is supposed to take, let's say, with a 1 second interval time, well, this is going to be basically holding your system hostage for 2 minutes, a little over 2 minutes here. Every 1 second it is going to increase attenuator 1 by 1 dB. So if you wanted to do other things during that time simultaneously, you weren't able to do that. And the same goes for the variable handover, which allows you to vary 2 attenuators at the same time. However, if you want to do any extra testing, like for a MIMO test, a multiple output test, we didn't really have a solution for that. So that's where this kind of comes in. So if I wanted to do the same kind of test here, I could set my starting and stopping dB values for attenuators 1 and 2 to the same. Start at 0 dB, stop at 127, and then I'll just reverse them for attenuators 3 and 4. and set all my dB step sizes back to 1 dB. Hit the reset button. This is the starting condition, and hit start. So here I have 4 attenuators fading. Basically it's 2 variable handovers at the same time, and this is all done by everything in the GUI handover and GUI Indefinite Handover is done by sending out the set attenuator command. You can see our data sent window is constantly updating while this is happening. The set attenuator command is the fastest command we have that can set an attenuator. And this is what keeps our minimum interval times the least, right here. And because there's no response from the test system with a set attenuator command, you don't have that extra overhead of the controller sending back a response. Whereas with the, pause that for a second, the set attenuator with response command, if I had a test system hooked up here, would respond with, in this case, attenuator 1 is set to 0 dB. But without the response, SAR, SA, and that's what the handover is sending here, the SA command. Okay. So traditionally in the past you would have to set up a script and program a script in a text file and send that over a Telnet service like Hyperterminal. We have documentation on that in our user manuals, but this is possibly an easier way that you can go about doing that without having to write a whole script with all set attenuator commands and pauses in between them. Hopefully this should make your MIMO testing much easier. Alright, if you have any questions about this, feel free to email us at jfwengr@jfwindustries.com, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. And that pretty much concludes everything I wanted to talk about involving the GUI handover testing section of our test program. So, thank you for watching.